agreement, what again is there with regards to increases in prices at the contract termination, understand the terms and conditions, and also do understand your support expectations. Particularly if you are a global organization spanning either Europe or North America and Europe or other parts of the world, you do need to understand that. Now, some of the vendors are actually having alternatives to mitigate the risk. They allow you to shift from a SaaS to an on-premise. Also, vendors often allow you to move to the perpetual license, which is pretty similar to what I just said, and then understand that how and what happens with the data when you move from the on-premise or on-premise to SaaS or SaaS to on-premise. I think that's very important. Understanding the flexibility and customization capabilities you are gaining or losing when you move from one model to the next. And with that, we actually have 10 minutes left for questions, which is great. And I want to thank you for your patience with us here. And I'll turn it back to you, Emily.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to actually do a quick poll here just to find out what folks are thinking about from an adoption of SaaS perspective. And as I launch this and you're voting, I want to introduce Pete Carroll from Nilfisk Advance. He is the IT services manager there and just recently went through this whole decision process. So Eveline, I know you were going to ask Pete a couple of questions just to understand, what his thinking is. So
sure.
Welcome, Pete.
Thank you.
And thank you, Pete, also from my end here. Thanks for joining us. Emily already said IT service manager. Describe that role a little bit further for us.
Well, I'm responsible for IT support and operations for North, Central, and South America. So I manage our service desk and then the IT operations group, which would be our infrastructure, servers, network routing and switching and that such.
Excellent. And if I say the name of the company right now, Fisk, how big is the company, and then how big is your IT organization, to give us a bit of an idea on size?
Well, globally we're about 5,000 employees with either sales or manufacturing in 40-plus countries, I believe. Globally, our IT organization is about, I want to say about 90 people.
Mm-hmm.
We have two service organizations right now, IT service organizations, and that would be the organization I oversee, and then we also have one that oversees EMEA, and right now basically the rest of the world, APAC as well, but we are building a service center, IT service center and operations center in APAC as well.
Ah, okay, great, super. So perfect situation to ask you further questions. So when you were looking into SaaS or on-premise, what were your goals? What was the ultimate decision-making you used going down this path? I'm assuming you were part of the decision-making process.
Yes, I was. Well, we had a couple factors. Currently, we have two separate tools, one in our region and then one over in EMEA, and we needed to replace both of them. So this was a perfect time to start down this path. And obviously, with two data centers, we had those discussions. Where do we, if we're gonna have an on-premise, who hosts it, who supports it, and a SaaS model really helped us, answer that question. Neither one of us need to support it. We can have the vendor support it. We have a large number of off-site workers, a large sales force, who can then get access to the tool no matter where they are. If they need to request IT support or IT assistance, they can do that without having to even get on a VPN connection. So it made it more accessible to the people who are what we kind of call our road warriors. Mm-hmm. So it was much easier for them to get access to the system, and it just, from our perspective, it just made sense as we try to combine. Our goal is to try to combine come up with one IT support organization, and this makes it much easier for us to adopt that model.
How long did it take you guys to decide on, the SaaS versus on-premise? And then when you decided, when you finally had the decision, how long did it actually take you to start getting something done in that space?
It didn't take us that long. It took us, a few weeks of discussions versus, on-premise versus SaaS. Once we made that decision, we started engaging vendors, and I think within probably 4 to 6 weeks, we had made the decision on what vendor we were going to go with.
Excellent.
So it was a pretty quick process for us.
Excellent. Was there any SaaS experience in your company in other areas, in HR or any other spaces, or were you guys newcomers to SaaS?
We're relatively newcomers to SaaS, but it is obviously every application we look at now going forward, we will always consider SaaS as an option.
Interesting. Now, I'm sure I'm always interested in challenges, and I know folks who are listening in probably the same way. When you went through your SaaS journey, once you made a decision, what were some of the challenges you found with regards to understanding the offerings, system ideas, differentiation? Of course, for me as an analyst, this is important because my research in the future will gear very much towards understanding, helping our clients, all of that. But curious about what did you find challenging during your SaaS journey?
Well, finding vendors that actually have a SaaS model, it's not, at least in IT service management, there aren't a lot of them out there, at least that we could find, that kind of fit, obviously our price range, I guess. But and then, everybody's a little bit different, so it was hard to compare apples to apples when we were doing demos and working with the vendors. Licensing models are different from vendor to vendor, so it was hard for us to figure out what was the best licensing model for us, and then thus, the pricing. So some of those were some issues that were a little bit of a challenge for us, and obviously, the functionality. There's some differences in functionality across the spectrum. So finding out which provider, which vendor could give us the functionality we needed. But and just finding those the SaaS vendors out there right now was a little bit of a challenge as well.
Interesting. And then last but not least, I want to make sure that we get some questions also for the audience, of course. If you had to give the audience 3 pieces of advice, quickly, which come to your head, what would you say?
Well, I would obviously, try to define your business requirements before you start looking for the tool, so it makes it easier to narrow down which tools out there can fit your needs. Have an idea, obviously, of budget, how much you can spend. There is several different licensing models out there, and from a third one, right off the top of my head, I would say get as detailed as you can in the demos, and make sure when you're looking at the SaaS models, make sure you get a sense of the hosting environment that the vendor has. Can they provide that? Is it a fully redundant data center? Do they have multiple data centers to support? But make sure that if you're going to go with the SaaS model, make sure that they're going to be able to provide you that service and that uptime that you're going to need.
Excellent. Fantastic, Pete. This was very good. I really, really appreciate your time. And Emily, questions from the audience?
Yes, absolutely. So just a quick reminder for anyone that has any questions, feel free to type them into the questions box of the webinar. One of the questions that we received was trying to understand maybe some specific examples, a question from David, specific examples of the different levels in the maturity model. So maybe describing more in detail what exactly is number 3 and number 4 from that maturity standpoint.
So when I was talking about the maturity models, I typically, and inside Forrester, us in the ITSM space, use the CMMI or CMM maturity level, which goes from 1 to 5. If you do want to quickly send me an email at ehubbert@forrester.com, I can send you a maturity model, which we're actually currently suggesting to our customers. One is very much an undocumented process, very chaotic, and 5 is a very automated process. Of course, these maturity levels depend on or can be looked at in each functional area or each process area. Like, for example, we look at the incident management process, we look at problem management, change in config management, service level management, and you would want to look in each of these processes where you are from a maturity of 1 to 5. And again, we use the CMM or CMMI, which is by Carnegie Mellon, part of something developed fairly a long time ago around software development, but adoptable in ITSM.
Perfect. Okay. Another question from Gretel is, can you explain why ASP is not multi-tenant?
Well, it depends on the ASP in itself. In some cases, application service providers have the ability to do multi-tenant architectures, but typically the ASPs we have seen have a single-tenant architecture which they didn't allow and leverage. But as I said, I think I did mention, and this is an excellent question, there is some changes happening. Many of the ASPs are realizing the opportunities of course, supporting and providing a multi-tenancy to their customers as well. So we see some shifts here in that model.
Great. Okay. Another question from Joris. Do you see similar trends in IaaS and PaaS as you do for SaaS? Any differences there?
The growth is fairly consistent across the different cloud models. We do see a bit more aggressiveness around the SaaS, and I think Salesforce.com is the most famous SaaS vendor who really started way back developing this model. But as clients are realizing that infrastructure and platforms are available outside to do their work, and not only in application development or in the testing environment, but also for production environments, we see a shift to the cloud model aggressively. Again, if you're interested in adoption data on the different platforms, do send me an email at ehubbert@forrester.com. I'd be more than happy to share with you the cloud adoption data we have inside Forrester.
Okay, great. So I think we're pretty close to the hour now, not just past a little bit. So I want to just thank both Eveline and Pete for their time today, and for everyone that also joined in. I hope you found the presentation valuable. I know I've gotten a couple questions about the availability to replay, so we will make that recording available to folks in the coming days. Thanks again for joining, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.